Guys, we're back today to show you how to take the warp chain that we have actually done on the warping board and apply it to the rigid heddle. Okay, now some of the things I've already done and I've set up, but I just want to go through it. And if you've done rigid heddle weaving, which I'm sure you have, because this is usually a step up with the warping board from direct warping, but I'm just going to go through a couple of things about this that makes things more streamlined before we start this process, okay? Because you're usually by yourself and you usually have two hands. Okay, so first and foremost, we know that this is a dent 12, and if you have seen the videos in the past that I have done, I use rubber bands a lot, okay? This actually will hold the back stick that we're going to apply the warp to. It actually just holds it up, and it makes you not have to worry about your hands. So once again, I've just got two regular rubber bands on the back, and this is my reed. To show you this too, I always do this before I put my reed in here. We know that our project was going to be close to 9 inches, 8 point something, almost 9. I went ahead and measured that. Otherwise, you're guessing at where you're going to do. So it's going to be in between the tapes, okay? You can measure it, but I always just do this because that's another thing I don't have to do when I'm starting it. So once again, goes in. Put your rubber bands on for right now. Not saying that we won't take them off. It's just allowing you to get things ready visually and have everything in your hands. All right, the second thing we need to do is to permanently attach this to a table. A lot of the rigid heddles come with clamps. Depending on the thicknesses of the table, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So you've also seen me use these squeeze clamps like this. They're great. I've also said make this down because you don't want to scratch or poke yourself. Okay. So we have the rigid heddle actually mounted to the table. I have a couple of rubber bands right here just to hold my rigid heddle for right now. This is the biggest part people get confused about, because direct warping, you're always doing one at a time and you're already putting it through the rigid heddle. This one's totally different, okay? It's not any harder, it's just different. So this was the warp chain that I had yesterday. And if you remember correctly, I had a cross, okay? This, I can't stress enough, is the most important part of this warp, because it is going to keep everything in the correct order. If you don't have this, it's going to be hard, maybe impossible. But so don't lose this. And so I'm doing a couple of steps to this so that you don't lose this, okay? So the first thing we do is we make sure that you didn't over knot it, and we just want to make sure that this is actually it's coming out of the loops, okay? You don't want to make sure there was a knot here. There shouldn't have been, but that's where you want it. All right, so I've actually gone to this second choke, which we call this one around the world, if you remember. This one was around the world, this was the cross, okay? This one's kind of important because I'm going to use this as my anchor point, all right? And normally I have a brick that I put on it. So today I'm just going to stick a book on it, a real heavy book or something, just to hold it, okay? Because I'm going to get some tension in here first, all right? So I have a book, and I'm going to spread this on my table, and I'm just going to put a book right here, okay? This part right here, it looks twisted, so it's not going to be twisted when it goes in. I'm just going to lay it so it's flat. I have a really good, just want to make sure I can pull on this, okay? So back to the cross. This may be a new concept for some people. Floor loom weavers use these. They're normally sticks that are the width of your loom. We do sell these individually. So when you purchase one, you need to purchase two, okay? These are nice and smooth and slick because they actually are going to be in the cross, and if your threads catch on it, that's going to cause major issues. But we call these, Ashford calls them warp cross sticks. I've always referenced them as lease sticks. The reason you really know is they have holes here on the two ends. This one has a hole in the center because they also use this stick as the one that goes on their loom. This is a shack. I want to find sticks that are just about the same size as this loom, so that's why I chose these. Ashford makes them too. They're unfinished. These actually have more holes. You really just need 2 holes at the end for this purpose, okay? They come in handy though, so if you get a pair, basically that's what these are used for, or for your rod here. But this is not going to fit in a shaft. All right, so we have the cross here, and that was the bow tie that I had on the actual cross, and this made the U-turn. So what you're wanting to do is part it, okay? I want to be able to see that blue thread. This is another reason why I used a different color thread than the actual warp. If you see a thread crossing over, you need to make sure that it is away from that blue part right here. So I'm going to go all the way to the other side. And so when I've gone to the other side, you can see that that's apart. There's nothing in its way. So this will be 1 stick, and I need to now do this side right here, okay? So I'm going to turn this so that I can part this one. If you've never done this before, use a small warp at first so that you can see exactly what it's going to do. All right, so basically now I have that parted. This should mimic the dowel rods actually on the cross of the warping board, okay? Nothing in its way on both sides. This is where I actually then put the lease stick. So that's 1, and then the back one. So you actually have both of these in here. Sometimes some of the pre-wound warps will let you use your hand. I like to have my hands free, so that's why I use these so much, okay? So after this, we're going to now put this on the actual loom, okay? I'm still not taking out the cross thread. I need to actually secure these, so if one of them falls out, I got to make sure they're secure, okay? So that's the next step. All right, so I got the leash sticks here. I'm going to utilize rubber bands again. These really do come in handy. If you slide this on, and I'm actually going to go under this and just loop it on top. That's actually going to hold that one. Now I'm going to do this side over here. Put it on this. I've illustrated this before in videos. Just on, under, and then over. This is really not going to go anywhere. This one's very, very secure, okay? This one is not, and I want it to be about right here. So what I'm now going to do, that's what these holes are for, I'm going to secure them together. So once again, I have just these strings doubled over, just like I used right here. I have a bunch of these in my studio that I'm always using. A lot of times, go down might be easier. A lot of times I can do this so that I know that this is not going to slide off, and then I'm actually in this hole here. And all you're doing is securing these together, okay? I have a tendency to I don't want them touching each other. I usually leave the fingers width apart so that these threads will slide. So let me secure these, and then we'll be on our way. Do this side too. So these are basically looking at the cross. Check it. When I open this like this, I should see nothing but my line. When I look at it on this side, I should see nothing but this. And the threads are completely in one line. There's no twist or anything, okay? If you're absolutely sure, because this is the last time before I take this out. Once I take this out, this is the only thing keeping them in the correct order. So remember, I had a loop, so I can pull, all right? Just kind of loosen this one, and then I'm going to take this out. Notice where my hand is. It's holding this so that this can come out pretty easily. So when I'm doing this, I know what I had is the very first thread is here. This one should be the loop. If you see, it's looped. The last one over here, if you remembered, it had the larger loop. Okay, so that's a single. I call these the doubles because there's a loop. I don't cut these. I do not cut these. All right, use this as you normally would with the rigid heddle. We're going to slay these both through the slit. All right, so she's going to get close to these, and I'm going to show you how to thread this through the slit, and then how to put it back here because you already have a loop. All right, there is specific ways. Okay, so we're going to do that next. All right, so just to reiterate, the emphasis of these leash sticks, this is the only one. It can actually come out very easily. So this is the one I don't want to lose, okay? I call this my single. I'm just going to loop it on something right now. It'll be the last one I deal with. All of these will have the loop on them. Sometimes you'll have a single here and here, okay? But most of them will have a loop. When I look at this, if you grab this right here at this loop, if you can see, I can actually pull these, and there's a cross here, if you look. If I can get this one out of the way. Each one of these are separated. My next one, this is my first one, this is my second one, this is my third one, this is my fourth one. You will slay these in the slits in relationship to the way they go in the cross. That's what keeps things in order. All right. When you have this, it's easy up front. When you have something, say for example like this one, it's tethered in the back like this. These actually are the easiest ones. These are Texile. They will come off like this, so you could slide your warp over it. All right. Ashford actually has a different back stick back here, and it has plastic rods, and you can't do that. So in lieu of that, I actually just add another parallel stick to it. It's similar to lashing, okay? So a lot of Ashford people know that. But on shacks, this actually does come off, okay? So when you take this off, these will go right back on, all right? So I'm going to leave the middle one on, and I'm going to take the two end ones. I'm going to reuse my rubber bands to hold this, okay, in place, and then my rubber band here, all right? So, to thread this, remember I had my tape right here, so I know which slit I have to go in, okay? So when I grab this one, and I just grab it from the top, you're going to pull it through. That's my first one, okay? You can thread this on the rod, but that means you're going to have to be moving this one because you got to do them in this sequential order, okay? So if you want to, this is another way to help this, get it on here. Use another one of your sticks. It can be a warp stick or another stick like this. And just stick the actual, just to hold it. You just want to hold on to it like this. So then the next one, remember you go in the next slit, putting it on, open it up. You want to slide it on the stick. See how I'm grabbing these? Slide it on the stick. And then sometimes I'll take these, lay them out in order like this, and it makes it easier to grab them and slay them quicker. All right, so I've done a couple more since in the time lapse. The next one I want to show, this one doesn't have a knot in it, so it goes through pretty clean. You'll notice those. If you just have a just a stick back here that's basically used as it, you can go from this direction too, okay? Because all this is doing is that you want to maintain this on an actual stick. And then I'm going to show you how to transfer this to this that already has a tie rod. I did want to make a point that if you have done some with knots, like this one, sometimes pulling knots through, people tend to pull it at the very top of the reed. If you will lower this to the middle of the reed, it has more flex and the knots will pull through easier. Trying to pull them here is tight. The plastic won't bend a little bit. In the middle, it bends. So once again, you're putting it on a stick all the way. And I will continue doing this real quick, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how to transfer this to the back stick. Alright, so I've got just a few more of these to go, and I'm going to show you just another method to adding it to the stick. Some people want to slay these through the slits and not do anything on the end. Don't put it on the stick. So here's a trick. So you can slay, just leave it. The next one. Next. And then the next one. I've got one little thing. If you do that, grab these. Use the stick to your advantage. So what I'm going to do is grab the top layer. And if I raise this up, you're actually getting a shed back here, which is where my loop is. So then I can utilize that, put it on the stick. Don't forget your single. This is very important. This is why I made this bigger, so that when I slay it through the slit, this loop goes on the stick. So right now I have everything through the slit. I have my sticks through the reed, only through the slits, and now here. What I need to do now is attach it to the final rod, okay? So when I do that, notice my two ends are not attached. This one I'm going to leave. This is my middle point, okay? If you have done this in the past, you have a middle point on your reed, usually with a Sharpie or a mark or something, okay? And I know that it was in the middle here was because of my warping scenario. I had 4 and 5, okay? So I know this is the center. You can also do that, find the center back here, from this point here, okay? I'm just coming to the back. So this is the center. This is half, this is half, okay? So that's what makes it so much easier to the back rod. You'll just take this, pretend like it's going to slide in, pick this back up. Notice it's the same thing, slide it on. This stick I don't need. But before I don't need it, remember these, I'm going to take this, slide it on the edge. Well, this is where you need 2 hands, folks. Remember the next one? This stick, I don't need this one anymore. So it literally gets slid out because the other one, they're all here on this one. And to know that it's correct, take your rod. If you see what I'm doing, I'm pulling. Tighten this up just a little bit. You will see sometimes they look like they're disarrayed, but because they're a loop, all I'm doing is looping them perpendicular to where they are. This one does slide a little bit, so make sure it's centered. Give it a little bit more tension. Once again, I'm going to work on this. I don't want to wind it unless they're straight. All the way, all the way. Now, I have seen one thing right here. There's one right here that didn't get put on the actual rod here. This has to be attached, otherwise it's going to not be a part of the warp, okay? Even though I have put this on here, okay? Even though I've let a little bit of warp out. I'm going to take this one off, slide this off, grab these just like your finger, okay, to the point of this one, loop, and then reinsert back on the rod. This gives you a chance to see everything before you even wind it on there. You really want to make sure that things are on there before you wind, because you can't go, you have to undo it if it isn't. And then I'm going to pull again. This one's in the center, should be in the center of the warp. These are on the edges. So that looks pretty good. So now it's actually on the rod. Everything is one length, so that when I get ready to crank on, it's just going to crank just directly on there like you normally would. Now, you decide whether you want to use paper or sticks. That's going to be up to you. But now we are technically ready to wind on. You can leave these in or take them out. It makes no difference, because you now have them here, and then you will slay these accordingly into the holes. So everybody knows how to do this section right here. We will leave these in, and then we may take a shot of how we're taking them out of here, because at the very end, back down here, you will end up having to cut that in so that you will have singles. But we'll wind this on and we'll go from there, okay? We're at the end of the warp. This particular choke was my figure 8, is what I referenced, okay? Before I take the choke out, I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the cross. I'm going to open it up so that I know that I'm actually holding the actual loop. This is what the dowel was around too on the warping board. So with this, when I'm doing this, notice my warp's still one length because I never cut it. I have to cut this end.
Bring your hand out.
I have to cut this end. I don't want to cut it just straight across, because we tried to use as much of this warp as possible. So if the choke is tight enough, you can actually stick your scissors in the very end of it and see how I'm making it even. So then when I cut this, all my threads will be the same lengths. Now there's going to be some discrepancies, okay? And a lot of these have the knots here at the ends. That's just waste anyway when we're going to be able to lash it to the loom, okay? So at this point, once I've done this, then I'm going to actually take my figure 8 out. And I should have a bow tie. And the way I always wonder which one to pull, it's usually the short one. So when I pull that one, wiggle it a minute, it should come out pretty easily. And if you think about it, where I had that, there's usually one layer, okay? So this, I've actually done like this, and then I am going to finish cranking this on the loom. So, with that said, can you see this part? With this said, you can use these to do the holes, and if you think about it, this one is a single, this one is the double. It used to be the double loop, but now what you're going to do is just take one and put it in the hole, one stays in the slit, one in the hole, goes through here. The only time you need to be really careful is when you get to this point here where it changes color. You need to realize how many you had. We had 13 creams and then we did a dark. That's what you need to make sure. So when you start the slaying process or the threading process through the holes, you just need to make sure you're doing it in the correct order that you have done your pattern in. But hopefully these leash sticks will help you if you do your warps on a warping board. Okay, so I hope some of this procedure or techniques have helped you to utilize a different technique.